Every summer, a close-knit group of friends made it a tradition to take a trip together. There was Sarah, the adventurous spirit of the group, Tom, the practical and level-headed one, Lisa, who loved the supernatural and always brought ghost stories to the campfire, and finally, Ben, the jokester who kept everyone laughing. This summer, they decided to rent a lake house in a remote part of the countryside. The house, nestled on the edge of a serene lake, promised a week of relaxation, swimming and evening bonfires. They had found the lake house online and were enchanted by its rustic charm and picturesque surroundings. With their bags packed and excitement in the air, they set off early one Saturday morning. The drive was long but scenic, taking them through rolling hills and dense forests. They finally arrived at the lake house just as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the water. The lake house was even more beautiful than the pictures had shown. It was a large wooden structure with a wraparound porch overlooking the lake. The air was filled with the fresh scent of pine and the gentle lapping of water against the shore. They quickly unloaded their bags and chose their rooms, each one cozy and inviting with large windows offering stunning views of the lake. After settling in, they gathered on the porch to watch the sunset. The sky turned shades of pink and orange, reflecting off the calm waters. Sarah snapped photos with her phone while Ben joked about catching a lake monster. Tom started a fire in the pit by the shore, and Lisa brought out her collection of ghost stories. As night fell, they sat around the fire, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. Everything seemed perfect. But as the night grew darker, they began to notice something strange. A chill settled over the lake, and the forest around them grew eerily quiet. The only sounds were the crackling of the fire and the occasional splash of a fish jumping in the lake. After a few hours, they decided to call it a night. They headed inside, the cozy warmth of the lake house a welcome contrast to the chilly night air. Each friend retreated to their room, looking forward to a good night's sleep. Sarah had trouble falling asleep. She tossed and turned, feeling an unexplainable unease. Finally, she decided to get a glass of water from the kitchen. As she walked down the dark hallway, she felt a cold draft and heard a faint whispering sound. She paused, straining to listen, but the whispering stopped. She shrugged it off as her imagination playing tricks on her and continued to the kitchen. As she filled her glass at the sink, she glanced out the window and froze. There, in the moonlit yard, she saw a shadowy figure standing near the edge of the lake. She blinked, and the figure was gone. Shaking, she hurried back to her room and locked the door. She didn't want to alarm the others, so she kept the incident to herself. Eventually, she fell into a restless sleep, haunted by strange dreams. The next morning, Sarah was still unsettled by what she had seen. She decided to mention it to Tom, who was making breakfast in the kitchen. "Tom, do you believe in ghosts?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Tom looked at her and raised an eyebrow. "Not really. Why?" Sarah hesitated, then told him about the figure she had seen by the lake. Tom listened, his expression serious. "Maybe it was just a trick of the light," he said. "But let's keep an eye out, just in case." Throughout the day, strange things continued to happen. Ben's jokes became less frequent as he too felt a growing unease. Lisa, who loved the supernatural, was thrilled and spent most of the day trying to communicate with any spirits she believed might be present. That evening, they found an old journal in the living room. It belonged to the previous owners, a family who had lived there many years ago. The journal detailed their life at the lake house, but the entries became increasingly erratic. The final pages spoke of seeing shadowy figures and hearing voices, ending abruptly with a plea for help. Reading the journal sent chills down their spines. They decided to do some research and discovered that the family had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The lake house had been abandoned for years until it was put up for rent recently. That night, the strange occurrences escalated. They heard footsteps in the hallway, doors creaking open and closed, and the faint sound of children laughing. Ben's jokes about the lake monster seemed less funny now, and he kept a flashlight by his bed. Around midnight, Lisa woke up to find her room freezing cold. She saw her breath misting in the air and heard whispering near her bed. She turned on her flashlight and saw the figure of a little girl standing at the foot of her bed. The girl's eyes were dark and hollow, and she reached out a hand towards Lisa. Screaming, Lisa jumped out of bed and ran to Sarah's room. The others, awakened by her screams, rushed in to find Lisa shaking and sobbing. She told them what she had seen, and they all decided to stay together in the living room for the rest of the night. The next day, they were determined to find out what was haunting the lake house. They searched the house and grounds, looking for any clues. In the basement, they found a hidden door that led to a small, dark room. Inside, they discovered old photographs and letters from the family that had lived there. The letters spoke of a tragic accident in which the youngest daughter had drowned in the lake. The family had been unable to cope with the loss, and their grief had turned to madness. They had performed rituals to try and bring the girl back, but instead, they had unleashed something dark and malevolent. Realizing they were dealing with a vengeful spirit, the friends decided to perform a cleansing ritual to put the spirits to rest. They gathered supplies from the local town and prepared for the ritual that night. As night fell, they began the ritual by the lake. They lit candles and incense, and Lisa, who had researched the ritual, led the group in chanting prayers to cleanse the spirits. The air grew cold, and the fog rolled in from the lake, just like the first night. The ghostly figure of the little girl appeared again, standing at the edge of the lake. The friends continued the ritual, their voices growing stronger as they called upon the spirits to find peace. The girl slowly began to fade, her expression changing from anger to sorrow. Just as they thought the ritual was working, the ground beneath them shook, and the air was filled with a deafening roar. The lake itself seemed to come alive, churning and bubbling as if something was trying to rise from its depths. Summoning all their courage, the friends completed the final incantation, and a blinding light engulfed the area. The roaring stopped, and the fog lifted, revealing the lake house in its serene beauty once more. The ghostly figure was gone, and the oppressive feeling that had hung over the place vanished. Exhausted but relieved, the friends returned to the lake house. They knew they had freed the spirits and put an end to the haunting. They spent their remaining days at the lake house enjoying its beauty and tranquility, but the events of those nights stayed with them. Jake took breathtaking photos of the now peaceful lake, and they all made a pact to return each year to honor the memory of the family that had lived there. The lake house, once a place of darkness and despair, had been transformed into a place of healing and remembrance. In the quiet town of Ridgewood, summer meant two things: scorching heat and the annual carnival. For many, the carnival was the highlight of the year, a chance to escape the monotony of small-town life and immerse themselves in the bright lights, thrilling rides, and festive atmosphere. This year, a group of friends was particularly excited. There was Emily, the adventurous and curious one; Jason, the skeptic who never believed in anything supernatural; Katie, who loved anything related to horror and mystery; and Matt, the practical joker who always found a way to lighten the mood. They had been friends since elementary school, and each summer they eagerly anticipated the arrival of the carnival. This year, however, there were rumors circulating about the carnival being different, stranger, and more mysterious. Some townsfolk whispered about strange occurrences and unexplained disappearances, but the friends dismissed these stories as mere gossip. The day the carnival arrived, the friends gathered at Emily's house, buzzing with excitement. They made their way to the carnival grounds, which were set up on the outskirts of town. The air was filled with the smell of popcorn, cotton candy, and fried food. Brightly colored tents and flashing lights created a festive atmosphere, and the sounds of laughter and music filled the air. As they entered the carnival, they marveled at the various attractions: the Ferris wheel, the haunted house, the funhouse mirrors, and countless game stalls. They decided to start with the Ferris wheel to get a bird's-eye view of the entire carnival. From the top, the town seemed small and far away, and the carnival stretched out beneath them, a maze of lights and movement. After the Ferris wheel, they wandered through the carnival, trying different rides and games. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The carnival workers seemed unusually quiet and distant, and there was a strange vibe that she couldn't quite put her finger on. She mentioned it to Jason, who laughed it off. "You're just imagining things," Jason said. "It's just a carnival." But Emily couldn't shake her unease. She decided to keep her eyes and ears open for anything unusual. As the evening wore on, the friends decided to visit the fortune teller's tent. It was tucked away at the edge of the carnival, almost hidden from view. The tent was dark and covered in strange symbols. A sign outside read, "Madame Zara, Seer of Truths." Katie, always eager for anything mysterious, led the way inside. The interior of the tent was dimly lit by flickering candles, and the air was thick with the scent of incense. Madame Zara, a woman with piercing eyes and a mysterious aura, sat behind a small table. She beckoned them to sit. One by one, they sat in front of Madame Zara as she read their fortunes. When it was Emily's turn, Madame Zara's expression grew serious. She took Emily's hand and closed her eyes, as if sensing something beyond the physical world. "You are in grave danger," Madame Zara whispered. "This carnival is not what it seems. You must leave before midnight, or you will be trapped here forever." Emily's heart raced. She wanted to dismiss it as a trick, but something in Madame Zara's eyes told her the warning was real. She thanked the fortune teller and hurried out of the tent, her friends following close behind. Outside, Emily shared Madame Zara's warning with the group. Jason rolled his eyes, but Katie and Matt seemed intrigued. "Maybe we should check out the carnival a bit more," Matt suggested, "just to see if there's any truth to it." They decided to explore the carnival more thoroughly, paying closer attention to the details. They noticed that many of the performers seemed unnaturally pale and moved with a strange, almost mechanical grace. The ringmaster, a tall man with a sinister smile, watched them with eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. As they walked past the funhouse, they heard a faint, eerie melody coming from inside. Curious, they entered, only to find the mirrors reflecting distorted and unsettling images. Their reflections seemed to move on their own, and at times they saw figures behind them that disappeared when they turned around. Emily's unease grew stronger. They decided to leave the funhouse and head towards the exit, but found themselves disoriented. The layout of the carnival seemed to have changed, and they couldn't find the way out. As they wandered through the carnival, they realized they were not alone. Other visitors seemed to be in a similar state of confusion and fear. They overheard snippets of conversations about missing friends and family members who had entered the carnival and never returned. Panic set in as they tried to find their way out. The carnival, once a place of joy and excitement, now felt like a sinister trap. The friends held onto each other, trying to stay together in the growing chaos. Suddenly, they noticed that Matt was missing. One moment he had been right behind them, and the next, he was gone. They called out his name, but there was no response. Fear gripped them as they searched for their friend, the carnival seeming to close in around them. In their frantic search, they stumbled upon a hidden tent at the far end of the carnival. Inside, they found walls covered in old newspaper clippings and photographs of people who had gone missing over the years. The clippings told stories of mysterious disappearances linked to the carnival, stretching back decades. Emily's heart pounded as she realized the truth: the carnival was a trap, and they were its latest victims. Desperation drove them to search for a way out, but every path seemed to lead them deeper into the maze. As they neared midnight, they heard a familiar voice calling out. It was Matt, but his voice sounded distant and distorted. They followed the sound and found him standing in the middle of a clearing, looking dazed and confused. "Matt, what happened?" Emily asked, rushing to his side. "I don't know," Matt replied, his voice trembling. "One moment I was with you, and the next I was here. We need to get out of here now." With renewed determination, they made their way towards the exit, guided by a faint hope that they could still escape. The carnival seemed to resist their efforts, but they pressed on, driven by fear and the will to survive. As the clock struck midnight, they reached the entrance to the carnival grounds. The air grew cold, and the lights flickered ominously. The ringmaster appeared before them, his sinister smile widening. "You cannot leave," he said, his voice echoing with malevolence. "You belong to the carnival now." Emily stepped forward, holding the fortune teller's warning in her mind. "We don't belong to you," she said defiantly. "We're leaving, and you can't stop us." The ringmaster's smile faded, replaced by a look of fury. The friends pushed past him, running towards the town lights in the distance. The carnival seemed to close in around them, but they kept running, refusing to look back. Breathless and shaken, they finally emerged from the carnival grounds. They collapsed on the side of the road, their hearts pounding and their bodies trembling. They looked back, but the carnival was gone, leaving only an empty field behind. They sat in silence for a while, trying to process what had happened. They knew they had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. They made a pact never to speak of the carnival again, and to cherish the life and freedom they still had. Emily, Jason, Katie, and Matt returned to their normal lives, forever changed by their harrowing experience. They stayed close, their bond strengthened by the ordeal they had faced together. And every summer, they remembered the carnival, grateful for the warning that had saved them from its dark grip. The Peterson family had always loved their summer vacations by the lake. Every year, they looked forward to escaping the city and spending a few weeks in nature. This year, they decided to rent a secluded lake house in the small town of Oak Ridge. The family consisted of John and Sarah, along with their 2 teenage children, Emma and Ryan. John, a history professor, was fascinated by old buildings and local legends, while Sarah, a writer, enjoyed the peace and quiet that the lake house promised. Emma and Ryan were excited about the idea of swimming, fishing, and exploring the woods. They arrived at the lake house on a warm, sunny afternoon. The house was charming, with a wraparound porch and large windows overlooking the lake. The surrounding area was lush with greenery, and the water was clear and inviting. It seemed like the perfect place for their summer getaway. The first few days at the lake house were idyllic. The family spent their days swimming in the lake, hiking in the woods, and enjoying the warm summer nights by the campfire. John and Sarah relaxed on the porch, while Emma and Ryan explored the nearby trails. Everything seemed perfect, but soon, they started noticing strange occurrences. One evening, as they sat by the campfire, they heard what sounded like whispering voices coming from the woods. At first, they dismissed it as the wind rustling the leaves, but the whispers seemed too distinct, almost as if someone was talking just out of earshot. Emma, who was more sensitive to the supernatural, felt a chill run down her spine. "Did you hear that?" she asked, looking around nervously. John chuckled, trying to lighten the mood. "It's just the wind, Emma. Nothing to worry about." But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. As the days went by, the strange occurrences became more frequent. One night, Sarah woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. She assumed it was one of the kids, but when she got up to check, she found the hallway empty. The next morning, she mentioned it to John, who suggested it might have been the old house settling. But the footsteps continued, and soon, Emma and Ryan also started hearing them. Emma even claimed to have seen a shadowy figure standing at the end of her bed one night. She described it as a tall, dark silhouette with no distinguishable features. "Maybe it's just your imagination," John said, trying to reassure her. But deep down, he couldn't help but feel uneasy. One afternoon, while exploring the attic, Ryan found an old photograph of a family standing in front of the lake house. The photo was dated 1925, and the family in the picture looked eerily similar to the Petersons. There was a man, a woman, and 2 children, a boy and a girl. "Look at this," Ryan said, showing the photo to his family. "Doesn't this look like us?" Sarah examined the photo, her eyes widening. "It's just a coincidence," she said, but her voice wavered. Intrigued by the photograph, John decided to do some research on the history of the lake house. He visited the local library and spent hours poring over old newspapers and records. What he discovered sent a shiver down his spine. In the 1920s, a family had lived in the lake house, the Millers. According to the records, the Millers had mysteriously disappeared one summer, leaving behind all their belongings. Despite extensive searches, they were never found. Locals believed that the lake house was haunted by their spirits, but over the years, the story had faded into obscurity. John returned to the lake house with a sense of foreboding. He shared his findings with Sarah, who was both fascinated and horrified. "Do you think we're in danger?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," John replied, "but we need to be cautious." As the days went by, the supernatural activity intensified. The footsteps in the hallway grew louder, and the whispers in the woods became more distinct. The shadowy figure appeared more frequently, and objects in the house began to move on their own. Doors would open and close by themselves, and lights would flicker without warning. One night, Emma woke up to find her bed shaking violently. She screamed, waking up the rest of the family. They rushed to her room and found her pale and trembling. "It's them," she whispered. "The Millers. They don't want us here." John and Sarah knew they couldn't ignore the signs any longer. They decided it was time to leave the lake house and return to the city, but as they packed their belongings, they realized something was wrong. The front door wouldn't open, and the windows seemed to be stuck. It was as if the house itself was trapping them. Desperate to escape, John decided to confront the spirits. He gathered his family in the living room and addressed the unseen presence. "We know about the Millers," he said, his voice steady. "We don't mean any harm. We just want to leave." At first, there was silence. Then, the room grew cold, and the shadowy figure appeared before them. It was the man from the photograph, his eyes filled with sadness. "You cannot leave," the spirit said in a low, echoing voice. "We are trapped here, and so are you." Sarah stepped forward, her fear replaced by determination. "There must be a way to break the curse," she said. "Tell us what we need to do." The spirit hesitated, then pointed towards the attic. "In the attic you will find the key to your freedom," he said. "But beware, the curse will not be easily broken." With trembling hands, John led the way to the attic. The air grew colder as they climbed the stairs, and the sense of dread intensified. In the attic, they found an old chest covered in dust. Inside, there were various trinkets and personal items belonging to the Millers. At the bottom of the chest, they found a small, ornate box. John opened the box and found a letter inside. It was written by Mr. Miller, detailing how the family had become cursed after disturbing an ancient burial ground near the lake. The only way to break the curse was to return the items they had taken and perform a ritual to appease the spirits. Determined to break the curse, the Petersons gathered the items from the chest and made their way to the burial ground. They followed the instructions in the letter, placing the items in the designated spots and reciting the incantation. As they completed the ritual, the ground began to tremble, and a bright light enveloped them. The shadowy figure of Mr. Miller appeared once more, his expression one of gratitude. "Thank you," he said. "You have freed us." The light faded, and the Petersons found themselves standing by the lake, the haunted lake house now a distant memory. They packed their belongings and left Oak Ridge, grateful to have escaped the curse. If you want to see more horror stories, please like the video, share your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Stay with us, thank you, and see you in the next videos.